Welcome, everybody. It's Kiss and Tell time. We're going to be doing some kissing and telling. I'm Dr. Jenny, founder and CEO of KissandTellMagazine.com. Thank you for joining us. And our guest tonight is Susan White from the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom. Hi, Susan. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Tell the audience a little bit about what you do.
Great. I'm the executive director for the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom, and NCSF is the advocacy group for the kink and consensual non-monogamy communities. So that means we help people who are kinky or consensually non-monogamous if they've been discriminated against, persecuted, or if they need any help with like a consent incident. And we also work with groups to help them create consent policies and procedures and make sure that they're operating legally so that we have places to meet.
Cool. So what got you into this? I'm curious.
I was an activist in the New York City community. I got discriminated against fairly early on. I was trying to be a writer and I got sexually harassed by a book publisher who found out I was in a consensually non-monogamous relationship with a couple. And he told me, if you want to get published, then you need to date me like you're dating them. And I was just like, I don't think so. No way. I got up and I walked out, and that almost immediately activated me. And I decided I wanted to fight back because exploring my sexuality was very powerful for me. It was very empowering for professional reasons in my personal life. And so I wanted to make sure that other people could do that without being discriminated against. So I worked on several different projects through the early 90s. And in doing that, I made a lot of contact with people who were getting child custody removed, especially in my work with the National Organization for Women. We were trying to rescind their anti-BDSM policy. And I just started hearing from all these people about the discrimination, job discrimination, somebody trying to report a sexual assault to the police, and the police were like, well, what did you expect? Mm-hmm. Which is like, I expected not to be assaulted, right? So what happened was in 1997, I gathered together the first 5 groups for the coalition. And now we have over 100 coalition partner groups and businesses. Nice. And we have supporting members as well.
Great. So has that been smooth sailing or not?
It's been 25 years and things have definitely changed. We've seen setbacks in certain areas, but then we've seen things like 50 Shades of Grey came along, and a lot of the folks that were in the kink communities, kind of their voices rose up and they talked about consent. Mm-hmm. And that really kind of was transformational for the kink community in terms of, we had always been just getting negative media coverage. Our events were shut down, attacked. And after that, we really kind of gained a more mainstream acceptance, and especially because the voices pointed out about consent issues within that trilogy. So we've seen different phases of things. I mean, at one point back in the 90s, people were arrested for doing consensual BDSM. If somebody heard you having like a spanking scene and the cops were called, they would arrest somebody. And then the pendulum swung all the way over because of 50 Shades of Grey, where it became impossible for you to get justice if you were violated, and it included BDSM. So that's why we ended up working with the American Law Institute to create a legal framework for consent to kink called explicit prior permission. So it's been kind of an effort every step of the way. But I think what we've come to now is that people understand the importance of consent, that it's nuanced. It's not just yes or no. People have to be informed. They have to be empowered to be able to say no. Privilege carries a lot of weight, and we need to recognize that. So we still got more to do, but I feel pretty happy with where we've come.
So what is it that you find is the most struggle? Like something that you consistently are having to fight on?
Yeah, things like what happened with the Dobbs decision, where it cast doubt on other legal decisions like Lawrence v. Texas, marriage equality. That's where a lot of our rights are based, is on privacy rights in Lawrence v. Texas. It's more commonly known as kind of an anti-sodomy law case, but it really is about consenting adults being able to express their sexuality, as long as it's consensual, as long as it doesn't seriously hurt somebody. So when we see things like that, it again, the pendulum swinging, it makes us afraid that some of the rights that we have right now are going to be taken away. And we see that in other things like FOSTA, the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act. What that did was, it's not being used to fight sex trafficking. It's being used to silence sex educators, sex therapists, even NCSF online. Because, yeah, it allows social media to discriminate and cut off our voices. And that's a problem, because there's not very many voices educating about sex. We need as many as we have.
Yeah, I mean, I am a sex therapist, actually. But yes, even in our field, you know, with fellow sex educators and sex coaches, you know, even they have a hard time speaking up because they're worried about the repercussion, you know.
Yeah, and they can also have their advertising, like they can't advertise, can't boost their Facebook post. And, you know, people who write books, they get shoved into this like erotica ghetto on Amazon, where you can't even find it if you just search for books about sex education. A lot of them are just ghettoized. You know, they're put into an area where you have to know exactly what you're looking for. You have to have the link, which is a problem. I mean, we want to be encouraging our professionals to be able to get the word out.
Yeah, and we want people to not feel shame. I mean, this is, you know, sex is a physical thing that is as automatic as your heartbeat. You know, the only difference is we can turn off our sexual desire. You know, you can't turn off your heart when you feel like it. But
it's a main drive for us. And if you don't explore it, if you don't really look at what your limits are, what your desires are, if you don't get that education to be able to talk to your partner about this, or partners, it's very difficult for you to be on the same page. I mean, that's one thing we see in the kink community. People come in and they get really excited and they want to try everything. And we call it like a newbie frenzy. And I think part of it is just because they're coming into our communities and they're meeting other people that they can actually talk about their desires with. And that's such an unusual thing in this country. And the kink community, the consensual non-monogamy communities are really doing a vital public service by providing this sex education by volunteers for free to other people. It's a very important thing for us to be supporting.
What what do you normally do? Like, do you get involved when there's a problem, or are you guys doing education classes? What exactly does NCSF do mainly?
You know, we have a lot of different programs. Go to our website. It's great that you've got that up. We have direct services. Our incident reporting and response helps between 200 and 300 groups, businesses, and individuals a year. So if you're having an issue, go to our incident reporting and response, fill out the form, and one of our team will get hold of you. We can provide professional referrals from our kink and polyamory aware database. Definitely, any professionals out there should join because it's serving an underserved population. And we can also provide resources, like, for example, if you're having a child custody issue, we have our child custody and consensual non-monogamy resource guide that includes the things that are normally brought up by family court by a judge, and has ways to counter it. We also have referrals to experts that your professional can consult with, right, to get more information. So direct services are very important for us. We also do education. We have our education outreach project, and you can, if you're a group or you have a mental health practice, you can request a workshop from us. We do it all for free. We provide IPV versus BDSM workshops just to kind of bring the cultural competency of your practice up to the level. And we also offer workshops on consent and kink and consensual non-monogamy for our own constituents. So we'll present at conferences, we'll present at, a group, like we do little virtual Zoom meetings. And we also go to places like the American Psychological Association. We were just there in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They had their big convention, and we have an exhibit there because there are no other groups talking about sex to the therapists, and they just flock to us. Sometimes it's 3-4 deep. They just need this information, and they are not able to access it anywhere else. And we actually just won the Presidential Citation Award from Division 44 at the APA.
Nice.
Yeah, for the work that we do. So yeah, we educate professionals, regular individuals. We do a ton of research because we have access to our communities, and it's really important that the research is, we ask the right questions, we use the right language, we reach the people that are actually doing this regularly so that we can reflect what's happening.
Well, congratulations on the award.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you find people fighting what you're trying to do?
Yes, there are a number of organizations that fight what we want to do. And they take a different tact depending on what's happening in the public. Right now, they're kind of focused on abortion rights, fighting that. But it's things like the Family Research Council, the Concerned Women for America, the Americans for Truth about homosexuality. They are kind of fighting an action to try to keep consenting adults from being able to express their sexuality. And some of these groups have really become more mainstream now, and we're seeing the effect on our laws. So it's very important that we offer a counter narrative and we let people know what we're doing and what we stand for so that other adults can find this information. They're not kept away from it.
Do you find it interesting, like I do, that people telling adults how to behave in privacy?
I'm sorry, excuse me? What was that? In privacy?
Yeah, in privacy. If they're in their own home or their apartment or wherever they are, but they're private, do you find it interesting that people are trying to control what that is and isn't?
Yeah, we always say, why? Why do people want to interfere? And what other people are doing, like, what is it about them that makes them want to spend their life in keeping other people, other adults, from expressing their sexuality? And I've had these conversations with some of them and explained, there's a lot of couples that are doing this to strengthen their marriage. And that fits perfectly in with their philosophy. But there is an anti-LGBT movement that's happening in America. And we see it on different levels. And I think that just kind of laps over because, our people, we have quite a large overlap. Our folks are 50 to 60% LGBTQIA. And a lot of people who are kinky consider themselves pansexual rather than heterosexual. So that technically puts them into a sexual minority.
Right.
So, I wonder about that sometimes. Why are people trying to stop us from doing something so fundamental that adults should have the right to do, as long as we're not seriously injuring each other? There's definitely limits, but I would think that people learning about their own limits, their own boundaries, learning how to communicate that and communicate what it is that they really want. I mean, a lot of times we're not verbalizing that. And that's such an important thing to acknowledge it, right? Own it.
Right. Own it. Right. And give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling and want what you want, And like you said, if it's consenting adults and no one is getting hurt, then, that you should have the freedom to do what you want privately. So.
Absolutely. And we believe that even privacy is at these events. People going to these events, they're getting all this education. We have tons of workshops that are offered. And there's usually a social space and a play space where
Mhm.
people can go and among their peers try certain things and make sure that they're in a safer environment to do this. Super important. I mean, we need to be able to talk to each other. And so a lot of our work early on was defending our spaces
Mhm.
as they tried to be shut down. And it's increasingly become more of an issue now. And that includes social media.
Mhm.
Check out NCSF's Facebook page, our TikTok, our Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel that has tons of videos about consent, as well as videos highlighting, amplifying voices,
Mhm.
more marginalized voices within the kink and consensual non-monogamy communities. That is really important to do. We really are making efforts to focus on that as an organization and to help our communities focus on that as well.
Mhm. Other than like kink and whatnot, what are the common misconceptions that you keep running into that you feel like you should be on the recorder constantly just playing it because you're repeating yourself a lot?
Mhm. The two most common were that we were sick or violent,
Mm.
and we have combated those things from day one.
Mhm.
And NCSF runs projects to combat those things. For example, we worked with the American Psychiatric Association
Mhm.
to depathologize BDSM, to change their code so that the paraphilic disorders, which are done non-consensually and um, are harmful to people,
Mhm.
versus the paraphilias, which are just unusual sexual interests.
Right.
And that had a huge impact on child custody. I mean, we had like 124 parents in 2008 lost custody of their kids, at least partially or fully. And then nowadays, it's more, we get 10 reports of that a year.
Mhm.
So we focus on these kind of projects like that that can actually make systemic change. And that's what we did with the American Law Institute when we helped create explicit prior permission in the revised model penal code on sexual assault. And we really just codified what the kink communities are doing, which is we talk about it before we do it.
Mhm.
You don't use force or restraint on somebody and then go, hey, do you like this? You have to actually talk to somebody first, figure out where your common ground is, make sure you have a safe word. Some people like to role play. So you want to
Mhm.
make sure if somebody's going to be protesting that, okay, but this is the safe word to really stop what's happening.
Mhm.
And again, you have to just make sure that it's informed because there's some risks in certain things that some are just not acceptable risk. I mean, when you strangle somebody, that's a big risk that you're taking. You can actually seriously injure or kill somebody.
Right.
So that's happening so casually. I think people need to know this information. It's not enough just to say yes. You have to understand what you're agreeing to. So
Right.
those are the misconceptions that we're fighting right now.
Mhm. To understand the dynamic to it. Mhm.
Yeah, the fact that you have to like have that discussion when you're equals.
Right.
A lot of people they'll meet somebody and like they have the right power dynamic and they immediately go into those power roles and you can't negotiate from that position. You actually really do have to talk to somebody from a position of equals, which is why we tell people also don't just address somebody as mistress or master or
Mhm.
by a name, baby girl or something like that. You haven't agreed to that.
Mhm.
You have to actually have that discussion before you even do that.
Mhm.
So that's something that the kink communities are really talking about a lot now. As far as consent goes, you see a ton of consent classes that are being offered by these groups. And we're helping these groups, we've got our sample consent policies and procedures so that groups can actually deal with it if there is a report of a consent violation. It's really important because we're not getting that support from law enforcement. And so we really do have to protect our own spaces.
Mhm. Good. That's great. I'm curious. I was just thinking about what you a few minutes ago when you mentioned you were trying to publish a book. Did you publish the book?
Well, I didn't publish that one, but
Oh,
I went on to publish over 30
wow.
books.
Right.
Yeah, I write nonfiction books on art and popular culture. I write science fiction novels. And yeah, it didn't hold my career back. I was lucky. I was fortunate and privileged that way. Um,
Mhm.
because I wasn't able to work with that publisher, and they went on to work with another writer, and that writer had a very successful series. So it was a little daunting at first to realize what it had cost me, standing up for my right to not be sexually harassed.
Right.
But it did work out in the end, and it gave me a nice career. I was able to volunteer for NCSF for 25 years and devote quite a bit of my life to this.
Nice. So, back when 50 Shades of Grey was popular, I remember there was like a dynamic that some people agreed with it and some people didn't. What were your thoughts on that?
There was definitely problematic issues in the books as well as the movies. There was some stalking. There was definitely some power inequalities between the people. There was inequalities in terms of one of them being more experienced than the other. And the fact that they were negotiating a contract where she was having to ask like about basic definitions of words. I mean, how can you agree if you don't even know what the word means, right? So, but I think what happened was it allowed us to bring that discussion into the mainstream, where we were able to bring those points up, and we were so lucky. There was lots of really great voices speaking out about it. And I liken it to kind of our Stonewall moment. Stonewall was a terrible event. It was a riot. People got hurt. It was violence. It was not a great thing. But what it did was it changed the way the media covered the early gay and lesbian movement. And I could say the same thing about 50 Shades of Grey. It changed the way the media covered us. And in fact, I think if we hadn't been able to have all that discussion about consent in 50 Shades of Grey, we might not have seen the resurgence of the Me Too movement in 2018, where we were all primed to talk about consent and talk about power dynamics in terms of consent. And so I think that we laid the groundwork for that with that giant 50 Shades discussion. And NCSF did a lot of mainstream education around that. We had flyers out at movies, theaters, and we had public discussions about it. And I think it just kind of opened up a chance for us all to talk about it a bit more.
Yeah, I agree with you. But it's one of those things that there was two sides, and they, one time would say, no, it's this, and one time would say, no, it's this. And so I remember that part of the discussion when it was popular.
It was a bodice ripper romance. I mean, it was, Twilight fan fiction. And it was, it was not the book I would have used to explain kink to the mainstream, but it was a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, you can't argue with that. Clearly, there was a lot of people who resonated with what was said in that book, or it wouldn't have been so popular.
Right. And plus, that book was a tad bit different than the movie, but that you can say that on every time they adapt a book into a movie. So, yeah. We're about to have a few more minutes, so I didn't know if there was something else you wanted to share with the audience or something else.
Yeah, I would encourage you to join NCSF. We are a true grassroots coalition, and our coalition partners are groups or businesses. And like I said, that could be a therapeutic practice. That could be, we have the Turkish Towel Company is a coalition partner of NCSF. So we really need to have our businesses and the groups join NCSF, because they vote for the board every year. They set the direction and our strategy at our coalition partner meeting. So we want as many people to join as possible, and we're willing to waive the membership fee of $100 because we don't want any barriers to parts of our community and professionals joining and being able to access everything that we have to offer. So I would encourage you to join NCSF. You can go to our website and it's under join, or just sign up to get our media updates. We put out articles about kink and consensual non-monogamy, as well as our announcements and our educational materials, like the 5 steps to EPP, explicit prior permission. So if you join up, you can just sign up on our blog, and you can get all of our information and stay up to date.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I hope the audience learned something from Susan tonight. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the work you're doing because obviously, as you know, we still need help, and we need help in educating people. We need people to realize they are normal, just because they have different preferences doesn't mean that they're not normal, whatever that means, normal, you know.
Absolutely. I think you're doing an amazing service to let people know that, you know, anybody who's feeling alone out there, you're not alone.
Right. Thank you. And I'm putting up the website KissenTellMagazine.com. Join us. Check out our articles. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And then usually we have a 2-week break, but not this time. We'll be here next week. And we'll be here with the founder, Wanda Cody, for a fun lecture. It's helping women with pelvic floor issues. So that should be a lot of fun. And once again, thank you, Susan. It was a joy talking to you. And
It was great talking to you too. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. And I'm going to play our closing music. Thank you, everybody. Kiss and tell.